prosperity. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Wheatley, the Executive Director of the Cloverdale District Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank everyone today for joining us for this special presentation. I would like to allow past President and Advocacy Chair of the Cloverdale District Chamber of Commerce, Rebecca Smith, to say a few words. Rebecca?
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. It's very important to the Cloverdale and District Chamber of Commerce that we afford our members and the community the opportunity to connect with and interact with the people that we put in government and who are vying to represent the people of Canada as well as our district in policy making and governing positions. So we make great efforts with our advocacy committee to advocate and represent Cloverdale and our constituents to those with decision-making power, but we also make a priority item to connect you with them, and that's what coffee and conversation meetings like this are for. So I thank Ms. Paul for joining us today, and I thank you all for coming and making a point of getting to know those who represent the parties of Canada and hope to represent us in government. So I just want to say that thank you. Remind our members that it's up to you to get involved and ask the questions that you have and to find out what is important to you for making voting decisions. So with that, and without further ado, I'd like to just welcome everyone, and I look forward to the conversation we have today.
Great. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Now I'd like to introduce Walter van Hulst, a social and political science teacher from Lord Tweedsmuir Secondary School in Surrey, and he's going to be our moderator today. And he's here also to introduce Ms. Paul.
Now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, the Honorable Ms. Annamie Paul. Ms. Paul is an activist and lawyer who has served as leader of the Green Party of Canada since October 3rd, 2020. She is the first Black Canadian and first Jewish woman to be elected leader of a federal party in Canada. She was the founder and executive director of the Canadian Centre for Political Leadership from 2001 to 2005, and has worked in civic engagement and international affairs positions, including in political affairs in Canada's mission to the European Union and in the Office of the Prosecutor at the International Criminal Court. She is co-founder of the Barcelona International Public Policy Hub. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Annamie Paul to share her remarks with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and can everyone hear me okay? Yep, okay. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I'm normally, certainly over the course of the last year, I have almost always been in Toronto on the traditional territories of the Mississauga, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. But for the last few weeks, Ottawa has been my home, and that is the unceded territory of the Algonquin. It is just a pleasure to be with you, and thank you so much for having me. This is really my way of virtually traveling across the country, and so I'm always grateful for the opportunity. If I can't meet you in person, at least we can meet this way for now. Thank you. I was just always saying in advance for the work that you do in your community. I have had, and of course, I come from an immigrant family where there are many, many, many small business owners. The Green Party of Canada, our membership has many, many, many small business owners. And it's just so important to have a really good Chamber of Commerce looking out for the interests of the community. So thank you very much for the work that you do on behalf of the people in your community. Just very briefly, so I can get to your questions, which I think is always the most interesting thing, and also means I don't have to guess at what would be most interesting for you to hear about. I'll just say a few quick things, maybe just to give you a sense of the direction of the Green Party at this moment, and then heading into the next election, which could be any day now. In terms of the period since I've become the leader and previous to that, it really is all about creating policies that are focused on people, creating policies that are innovative, but not for their own sake, ones that really recognize the needs of people, the needs of communities, and where we hope to work with others cooperatively to put the very best policy solutions in place. So whether we're talking about the climate and the environment, or whether we're talking about the opioid crisis, or whether we're talking about, again, the needs of small businesses, or whether, of course, we've been talking about various issues during the pandemic, the focus is always on how can we create as much positive change as possible, recognizing that positive change from a policy perspective most often happens when we work together. And that means across levels of government, that means across party lines, that means in a true spirit of cooperation and collaboration. So that's really the starting point for us when we're thinking about policy. And then certainly for, like all of us, for the last year, almost year and a half now, the pandemic has been the overarching thing that so many of our decisions and our policies have to be filtered through. You know, how can we make sure that people are being protected now, that we make sure that people are getting the help that they need, that businesses are getting the help that they need, that the economic damage is as limited as it can be, and that we can rebound as quickly as possible. That has really been a big thing for us. And in that respect, I think it's really important to point out that we're just about to end the session of Parliament, and we still have holes that we didn't quite manage to fill during this period, and they're still there, and there are still people that need help. And if they don't get the help, we can see the ricochet effects for a long time into the future. I'm just going to name a few. There are more than a few, but just a few of them. First, in the case of low-income renters. Now we know that low-income earners have been, some of them essential workers, frontline workers. They've been particularly hard hit during this pandemic. Many of them have had their hours cut if they haven't been eliminated altogether. And the ones who've had them eliminated altogether, there are many of those. We have seen, and this is a phenomenon, not just in our country, but in the United States and other developed countries as well, that there are jurisdictions where the emergency benefits have just not been enough. You know, if, depending on where you live in this country, $2,000 a month is what you pay for rent for a one-bedroom apartment. And so you have people that are falling slowly but surely into arrears, and they have been since the beginning of the pandemic. And we are at risk of a really big wave of evictions once some of the moratoriums get lifted. It had already started, moratoriums had been lifted before they were put back in place. And so we really need to be aware of the peril that those low-income renters are in and the knock-on effects. And so we have joined with housing advocates to call for a similar benefit for low-income renters that, similar to the one that's being provided to commercial tenants for the same reasons. Another benefit that we're pretty concerned about the cut to is, of course, the Canada Recovery Benefit. That amount is going to be cut down to $300 as of July the 26th. And for the people who need that, and there still will be people, I guarantee you, a month from now that are going to need that benefit and not have any choice but to use that benefit for a while longer, you simply cannot make it on $1,200 a month. You just can't. So as long as we recognize that we need this benefit, we should also recognize that it needs to be at a level so that people can make ends meet. So we're very concerned about that. And then finally, and because we're talking about the future of all of us and our future prosperity as a country, we should all really be worried about what Statistics Canada has called the risk of creating a lost generation of young people. The unemployment rate last summer for young people, for students and young people between 15 and 24 went as high as 40%. And this summer, last month, the unemployment rate was almost 25%. And so what Statistics Canada has said is that between the money that they're not earning in the summers, between the job experience that they're not getting, they haven't been getting over this period, combined with the historic rates of student debt, that we are at risk of many years of lost earnings for students, of an overall dramatic drop in earnings over a lifetime, and that we really have students that are in a lot of peril right now. And so making sure that we create supports for them in the short term in terms of a benefit, and then in the long term in terms of accelerated training programs, greater incentives for small businesses to hire young people are really going to be important. So those are some of the immediate things, but then long term, I really hope that our party is looking to the future and saying, what are the things that we need to put in place so that we can know right now that should we be faced with a pandemic like this in the future, should we be faced with some crisis in the future, we will be better off, we will be more resilient, our economy won't be at such great risk, people won't be at such great risk. And in that regard, there are two things in particular that we see as overarching things and that we will be talking about a lot as we head into the next election. The first is completing our social safety net. Everybody, every single person on this call, I'm certain, and every single person in Canada has a story, either personal or someone that they know, someone that they care about, a colleague, someone who just was thrown into chaos, their lives during this pandemic, whether it's because they had a loved one in long-term care and we had, the disaster in long-term care, or whether, as I said, it's someone who, a student in their family who didn't get a summer job last year and didn't have the money to go back to school this year, whether it's somebody who knows someone who does a gig economy job and they just did, they had no protection when the pandemic hit. We have seen the holes in our social safety net. We know where they are now. They've been revealed to us, and so let's fix them. Let's finish that unfinished business, because we realize now how much it costs. That it costs real money to us, to our economy, to our future prosperity. When people don't have the help they need, it's actually much more expensive than helping people. So that's one thing. And then the next thing, of course, is the excitement that we have about a green recovery. If you have paid any attention recently to the Canadian Federation of Municipalities and their plan for the future is for a green recovery as well. Because we all recognize that that's where the short-term jobs are going to be in order to get us going, whether it's retrofitting buildings, whether it is setting up those zero-emission charging stations, whether it is the coast-to-coast electricity grid, whether it's greening our public transportation. There are a lot of jobs in the short term in moving towards a green economy, and they pay more, and they're more stable, and they're easily transferable from existing skills. And then in the long term, there is just a global green rush going on to create the green economy. The United States has announced they're investing trillions in it. President Biden is investing trillions of dollars into creating a green economy. The European Union has dedicated more than a third of their budget to a green economy and a transition to that. And so Canada really can position itself well, but we've got to do it quickly. And in doing so, we can also, of course, do our fair share to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that that's my time. And so I will just say that we are ambitious, but we are always practical. I am a lawyer. I have a degree in public affairs, which is essentially policy analysis. I was very privileged to spend 2 years at Princeton University studying with Nobel laureate economists. And so I am quite a dry, practical person, I can tell you. And so when I say these things, I say them because I know that they're possible. I know that it is possible to be, on the one hand, incredibly ambitious, but at the same time to have a clear pathway toward it. And so that's really what I'm about. That's what our party is about. And as I said, I'm certain many Greens are members of your Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure we have those points of overlap. I'm really excited to work with all of you. It's really all hands on deck. And I'm excited for what the future could hold for Canada if we do that. Thank you.
Okay, so please submit your questions in the chat feature. We have several which have already been submitted from members. I'll just go to those first, and then we'll take the questions as they come in from the chat feature. Okay, first one, Ms. Paul. Obviously, as a business organization, we are concerned with the economic recovery from this pandemic. What does the Green Party plan to get us back on track?
Great, love that question. And no, I did not plant that question. In terms of getting us back on track, I touched on that. So our strategy is, and we are known for our innovation, for being the first to propose things. But I will say that this is something where there really is a growing global consensus amongst wealthy economies that the most efficient and effective pathway forward to economic recovery post-pandemic is via a green recovery. And so, as I said, this is something that that President Biden ran on. It's something he was elected on, and it's something that he has proposed the most ambitious budget in American history to fund. The same thing with the European Union. They've set aside a third of their long-term budget toward projects that support the green economy. China also, China also is investing heavily in the green economy. Not heavily, I should say. They're actually the leading global investor in green technology and clean technology and development of that. So Canada can join that. They can join this growing global consensus. Because the short-term jobs, as I said, are there in this, and I described some of them, and then also the long-term jobs as well. It's being described by Mark Carney and others as the greatest economic opportunity since the Industrial Revolution. We don't know how big the stimulus package will need to be, but we do know that we're going to be spending significant stimulus money to help us kickstart our economy post-pandemic. And one of the best long-term investments that we can make, if we're hoping to one day be able to pay that money back, is going to be investing it in things like renewable energies, in building the infrastructure that will help us to support a green economy, like the electricity grid, like this charging stations, the jobs that will come out of that, investing in clean tech. And so these strategies combined, and then working with the United States on things like a carbon border mechanism, working with them to create cross-border electricity grids, those are things that we see as central to the recovery. And then not to forget what I said first, which is that if we invest in people, we are investing in ourselves. And that means that if we invest in services that don't exist, where we clearly need them, or in reinforcing existing services that we have underfunded, those investments pay off. And if we don't make them, then we're really shortchanging ourselves for the future.
Okay, good. I'll go to the next one. How would you have dealt with a pandemic differently than the current government? What would you do in the future to ensure that we do not face similar challenges economically?
Yeah. So I always try to avoid being a Monday, a Monday morning quarterback. It's this was unprecedented, and I think it's very unfair for any political party to suggest that they would have gotten it totally right. That if they'd been up at bat, they would have gotten it completely right. I don't believe that. I think that there was going to be a lot of trial and error in any case. And I hope and I'm certain that we will be spending a lot of time once we're through the very worst of this pandemic, doing that, that audit of what we could have done better. And I hope that we'll do it in the spirit really of learning, for all of our sakes. Some of the things that we pushed for during the pandemic that didn't happen that we think would have made a big difference was to have an intergovernmental rapid response task force led by the health experts that would give people coordinated advice and that would coordinate any of the parts of the pandemic that would have benefited from that kind of coordination. Because we heard from the Canadian Medical Association, from epidemiologists, from infectious disease specialists, from the Red Cross, all through this pandemic, that there were some things that required one national coordinated response. And we never got that. We had 10 provinces and 3 territories doing things their own way. Then you add the municipal level on top of that, and people were more confused than they needed to be. The messaging was more confusing than it needed to be. The vaccination distribution strategy was more difficult than it needed to be. So that's definitely something that I would have done differently. And I'll just say it's not up to us. It required all parties, but I would have tried to keep the spirit of cross-party collaboration going on longer. The very best part of our response to this pandemic were the first 2-3 months or so, when everyone was united in making sure that we protected people and that we got things rolling. And that required all the parties to agree. I mean, there was no majority. That's when we were at our best. And the more that fell apart, the more that unraveled, the more uncoordinated our response became, the more political it became. So I would say that that's something that I miss, and I think that we all would have benefited if it had kept going longer. I could say so much more, but I know we don't have a lot of time.
No, you're doing great. I just wanted to cover as many questions as I can.
Yeah.
One thing, I failed to do the traditional acknowledgement at the beginning. I felt so bad when I read that. We would like to respectfully acknowledge we're on the land, which is unceded territory of the Matsui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. So when you started talking about the ones in our nation's capital and in Toronto, I felt bad. So what dovetails with that is we've not only had the discovery of the residential school missing children, but we've had a question submitted about the water situation on our First Nations reserves. And we were wondering, or a question has been submitted, what is your position on that? It's a very timely question, and love to hear your thoughts on that.
It's a great question. All I can say is that whenever I say anything about it, it just feels like empty words, because every single party has promised for many years now that they were going to be the one finally to end the boil water advisories, to ensure that every single part of this country had safe and accessible drinking water. All I can say is that it is something, of course, that we are incredibly committed to. What we have seen all along for decades is that there just simply is a mismatch between the promises and the political will and political prioritization that's put behind them, because that's really all that is missing. We have all the recommendations. We've had recommendations for years and years. I mean, even prior to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we've had them. We've had the calls to action. We've had the calls for justice. We know what needs to be done, and yet the prioritization doesn't happen. There is unfortunately a pattern of a flare-up, a frenzy of quick activity whenever something devastating is discovered. In this case, the bodies of those children at Kamloops. But then it dissipates and other things become more important. What we have seen during this pandemic is that when there is a will, there's a way. And so we have to make sure that people who actually have the will are in positions to get the job done. And that ultimately comes down to the voters and the citizens. Whatever party you belong to, you should be telling your member of parliament, the party you support, that the cost of your vote is for them to end the boil water advisories once and for all, whatever party they belong to, so that whomever is in power, we know that this is going to be done. Okay.
Another question we've had is, what is the Green Party's position regarding a 1% Canada-wide empty home tax? Proposed in the recent federal budget. Home prices are a big issue here in the Lower Mainland.
Oh boy, and where I am in Toronto too. I mean, it's it is all over the country. It is all over the country. This is the last year has been an historic year for home rises. The price of real estate. We put out, I think I'm trying to remember if it was March or April, but we've been talking about it for a very long time, but we actually wrote to the Prime Minister and launched a campaign specifically around this issue. we asked for Parliament to declare two crises, an affordable housing crisis and also a homelessness crisis. And then we proposed a whole list of policy options, all of which again are informed by the expertise of organizations like yourselves and others. I mean, this is again one of these areas where there is widespread consensus about what needs to be done. It's just a question of doing it and making it a priority. So certainly having a tax on foreign ownership, certainly a whole suite of measures designed at preventing the increased commodification of real estate, incentivizing things like purpose-built rental housing. There was an entire laundry list of things that we proposed. I really encourage you to go and take a look, but we believe that there is no question this is one of the defining crises that we have right now. We simply have separated out the housing market from the needs of the people who need to live in housing. It is completely unsustainable. And if you see that train barreling down the tracks, you propose solutions for it. So if you type in affordable housing and Green Party of Canada, you'll see the full list of our recommendations. We have launched petitions, letter writing campaigns. We have written directly to the ministers. We really are committed to highlighting this issue and working together with the other parties to get change.
Okay, and we've had a question from Surrey Councillor. How does the Green Party plan to reconcile the clean production, green energy in Canada with the dirty production of material resources in non-green countries, such as China, for example?
Excellent question. And it's an opportunity for me to completely policy wonk out and talk about. Does anyone know, just by a nod or a show of a hand, has anyone heard of carbon border adjustments or border carbon mechanisms? Yeah, I saw one hand, one sort of tentative hand. Okay, so I'll just very briefly, the answer to your question is yes. We need to, as we are making our progress towards a green economy, one which I really want to stress is one that is going to reap tremendous economic benefits for us. This is not a story of pain and suffering. This is a story of being ahead of the curve, which, as I said, all of our closest trading partners have done. But while you're doing that, how do you prevent those cheaper, dirtier goods from coming into your own country? How do you create incentives for those countries to get with the program and to put in place their own greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets? The answer are carbon border adjustments or carbon border mechanisms. President Biden has been calling it carbon tariffs. The idea is that you impose a price. When those dirty goods are imported into your country, they pay a price that reflects the actual cost of that good, given the pollution that they create. This is something that the European Union is right on the cusp of creating. It'll probably be in place within the next year, and that will cover the entire block of 27 countries. President Biden ran on creating a carbon tariff himself. And he's committed to doing that. The World Trade Organization has said that they consider this to be allowable under their trading rules. And so this is a double good thing for us. First, it protects our local businesses and allows them to grow and make their transition without having that unfair competition. And then it is one of the best things that Canada can do on its own or with the United States as one Canada-US frontier. It's one of the best things we can do to really incentivize polluting countries to create their own ambitious climate plans. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, take a look. Again, it's either called carbon border adjustments or carbon or border carbon mechanisms. If you go to my, I don't know if it's still up there. I put out a policy about this. If you're interested in it, please let me know, let my office know, and we'll send you the link. But there's quite a bit of information about it now because Canada has started tentative negotiations with the United States to create a joint border in the years to come.
Great. In the interest of time, I'll try to combine two questions.
Okay.
Sort of related to our national sovereignty and national identity. One is regarding the increased Russian presence in the Arctic. Are you concerned about that? And the second is also related to our independence or our sovereignty. Is in lieu of the discovery in Kamloops and also the need to be virtual in some cases, any thoughts on how we should celebrate Canada Day this year? Both because of the recent discovery, and there have been some cities which have cut back or even curtailed the celebration of our national holiday at a time when maybe some people could use a little celebration. So
yeah,
your thoughts on those two topics?
Yes, great questions. In terms of our North, absolutely, yes, I am concerned. We should all be concerned about what is happening in the high North, both from a national security perspective, and then also just in terms of, just our economy, resources. There's all kinds of, it's a sad and terrifying thing to see, the change in climate up north. That being said, there's no point in ignoring that it creates opportunities that didn't exist before, for it related to commerce. And of course, Russia's aware of that, and we've seen them, slowly but steadily seeking to claim their stake. We have been talking about that for a number of years, and actually with regard to the Canadian Armed Forces, we had talked about the need to be better prepared to defend and to assert our sovereignty over the high North. And we were laughed out of the room the first time we said it, and this happens a lot with the Greens initially, and then we stick to it, and people come around to seeing, oh, this actually made sense. That was one of the things that we had said years ago. And then the other one was that our armed forces needed to be better prepared to deal with natural disasters related to our change in climate. And again, we were mocked for that until the chief of the armed forces said that the thing that they were least prepared for and needed the most investment in was to be prepared for extreme weather events and natural disasters. He said that last year, about a year ago. With respect to, so yes, that has to be on our radar. We've got to understand that our change in climate brings new national security challenges. National security experts have said, around the world, that our change in climate is the greatest threat multiplier that we face. And so we need to be really aware of that element. And then finally, in terms of Canada Day, again, I can't speak for Indigenous peoples. I would never hope to do that. All I can say is that I have never had, any of those who have run for our party, for instance, Russell Coy, who ran for us in Vancouver, she and I did a joint statement last year together for National Indigenous Peoples Day. And, we talked so much in advance, and for both of us, it's never about taking away something from other peoples. It's never about making people feel ashamed of who they are. Telling them that they can't celebrate. It's about doing it in a thoughtful way, recognizing all that goes into that went into the country that we all call home, these lands that we call home. Today is National Indigenous Peoples Day. I want to wish everyone a happy National Indigenous Peoples Day. And I would say this is a day for us to learn more about the lands that we're on, the place that we call home, the people who were the original, are the original inhabitants of the territories we live on. And I think it's much more about that. It's much more about that than about being ashamed. If we want to be proud of being who we are and where we are, then let's earn it every single day by moving further towards reconciliation, by making sure there's clean drinking water, making sure we have done the work that we need to do. And then we don't have to ask that question, So I approach it that way. Yes, I'm certainly not I wouldn't castigate anyone for celebrating being in this wonderful place, but it comes with responsibilities. And I think that that's what we always have to remember.
Well, that's a good answer, I think. So that concludes our time available today. Tyler Dennis, Cloverdale District Chamber President, will provide our closing remarks today. And Ms. Paul, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
First off, thank you, Walter, so much for moderating the event. We truly appreciate that and having you facilitate those questions. So we thank that. On behalf of the Chamber, the Cloverdale District Chamber of Commerce, which represents Cloverdale, Clayton, and Campbell Heights, I want to share our sincerest appreciation and thank you to you, Ms. Paul, for coming out today, taking time on what I can only imagine is a busy schedule to speak with our members and to have a chance and to give feedback on that. We truly do appreciate that. We thank you for your valuable time, and we look forward to seeing you out there. As you said, there's going to be a campaign at some point. So we look forward to seeing you out there on the campaign trail, on the debates, and seeing the Greens present and give their vision for what they see happening with Canada in the future. Again, thank you so much for your time and taking a little bit out today to speak that. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We truly appreciate that. And also a big thank you to our sponsors, Uptown Business Machine and Kyocera as well. We truly appreciate it. Again, Ms. Paul, thank you so much. We do appreciate that. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Take care, everyone, and you stay safe as well. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And we